I never thought that at the age of 74, I would be living in my own house. But technically, it hasn't been mine for a long time. 10 years ago, I made a mistake that I regret every single day. I signed the house over to Martin, my only son, flesh and flesh of my flesh, and my biggest disappointment. The morning begins as usual. I open my eyes at 6 sharp, whether I want to or not. It's an old habit of a jeweler to get up early so I can work in the natural morning light. My bedroom is now on the first floor, the former guest room. Martin preferred me not to go up to the second floor, where he and Veronica were located. Or rather, where they used to be. Veronica had left him 3 years ago, unable to stand his perpetual discontent and sarcastic remarks. I don't blame her. I pull on my house pants, put on a flannel shirt. My hands are no longer the same. Buttons are difficult to undo. The hands, once capable of creating filigree patterns on gold and silver, now look like the roots of an old tree, knotty, with bulging veins. Arthritis has been my faithful companion for the past 15 years. In the kitchen, I try not to make any noise. Martin is a light sleeper, and his mood upon waking is directly related to how quiet I've spent the morning. Making tea, toasting toast, my breakfast is modest and unchanging. Sometimes I allow myself a soft-boiled egg, but only on Sundays. Today is Wednesday. The kitchen window overlooks the backyard. It used to be a beautiful garden, tended by Elizabeth, my late wife. After she died, the garden gradually went feral. Martin hired a gardener for the first 6 months, then decided it was a waste of money. Why do we need this garden, Father? Who sees it? Nobody. It's a lot of money. And so the garden grew overgrown with weeds, with only the old apple tree still bearing fruit against all odds. The Independence, where our house is located, was once considered an elite neighborhood. Now it's slowly losing its luster. The old mansions are giving way to modern buildings, and their inhabitants to the new rich with obscure sources of income. Elizabeth and I moved here in the 70s when the family jewelry business, Quincy and Sons, was thriving. Ironically, there were never any sons, just one Martin. Our jewelry shop has been in existence since 1893. My great-grandfather founded it, arriving from England with one suitcase of tools and a great deal of talent. Each generation of Quincy's perfected the craftsmanship and passed the baton to the next, until it was Martin's turn. As I finish my tea, I hear footsteps on the stairs. Heavy, measured. Martin. He's 45, but he moves like a much older man. Being overweight and sedentary has taken its toll. "Good morning," I say, when he appears in the kitchen. His hair, once thick and dark like Elizabeth's, has thinned to an indeterminate shade of russet. "Uh-huh," he mumbles, heading for the coffee maker. Martin doesn't look at me, as if I were a piece of furniture. "You're out of milk?" "Yesterday, I put it on the shopping list." He snorts irritably. "What am I supposed to do? Drink black coffee?" "I can go to the store right now." "No need. I'll get some on the way to work." Work. That's a big word. After Martin took over the family business, he took a job as a pawn shop appraiser, not the most prestigious job for a man of his education and ability. But he never wanted to learn the intricacies of jewelry making. "Why mess around with these tiny details when you can just sell finished jewelry?" he used to say. Eventually determined to modernize the business, he invested in expensive real estate for a downtown store and bought mass-produced jewelry from dubious suppliers. Customers who appreciated the uniqueness of Quincy's work left. New ones didn't come. After 3 years, I had to sell the space for next to nothing to cover at least some of my debts. I watched Martin make a sandwich in silence. A thick layer of butter, 2 hams, cheese. The doctor has prescribed him a diet, but he ignores all recommendations. "Do you have plans for tonight?" he asked me out of the blue. "No, I was going to read." "Why?" "Cancel it. We're having dinner at the Blue Clam at 7. "We?" I asked, surprised. Martin hadn't invited me to dinner outside the house in, I don't even remember how long. "Yes, we have. Me and you and someone else." "Someone?" "You'll find out tonight. Wear something decent, not those cardigans you always wear." He grabs a sandwich, pours coffee into a travel mug, and leaves the kitchen, leaving crumbs on the table and a vague sense of unease in my soul. After Martin leaves, I tidy up the kitchen and go to my room. There, in an old dresser, under a stack of sweaters, is a mahogany box. In it are my treasures, Not money or jewelry. Photographs. There's Elizabeth holding newborn Martin in her arms. Her face is glowing with happiness. We waited so long for a child, almost despairing, when the miracle happened. Martin was born when Elizabeth was 39 and I was 42. A late, long-awaited child. I'm going through the pictures. Martin at 5, looking earnestly at the camera. At 10, on a bicycle, a birthday present. At 15, a sullen teenager refusing to be photographed, but Elizabeth somehow manages to coax him out. The last picture we took together was of Martin's graduation. Elizabeth was already ill, but found the strength to attend the ceremony. 3 months later, she was gone. Sometimes I think that's when everything went downhill. Elizabeth was a buffer between Martin and me. She softened our conflicts, found compromises. Without her, we were like two strangers forced to live under the same roof. Sighing, I closed the box and put it back where it belongs. It's time to get down to business. Today is Wednesday, the day I visit the town library, the only place I feel comfortable. Martin thinks it's blasé. Who needs paper books in the age of the internet? He asks, not realizing that for me the smell of books and the silence of the reading room is a little piece of heaven on earth. I dress warmly. It's early fall this year, with freezing winds, an old tweed jacket, a wool scarf, a hat. I take a walking stick, not so much for support as for reassurance. There are some unpleasant types on the street, and a cane with a heavy paddle can be a good argument. Celia, the librarian, greets me like an old friend. She's young, barely 30, but she has a soft spot for older visitors, especially regulars like me. Mr. Quincy, I was just thinking about you. The new book on the history of jewelry came in. I put it aside for you. You spoil me, Celia, I said, smiling. Thank you. I spend several hours in the reading room, immersed in the history of the great jewelry houses of Europe. Some of the techniques described I have used in my own work. Others remain undeveloped. Do I regret anything? Perhaps only that I did not have time to pass on my skills to my pupil. Martin refused, and there were no others. The craft dies with me. I'll be home by 3. I have a few hours to get ready for dinner. What did Martin mean by someone else? Had he finally met a woman? After Veronica left, he dated a few, but the relationship never lasted more than a couple of months. Martin is too demanding, yet incapable of compromise, a lethal combination for any relationship. I take a shower, trying not to get my hair wet. Washing my hair at my age is an event that requires a special mood and a free evening. I shave extra carefully. I take out my suit from the closet, dark blue, almost black. I bought it 5 years ago for the funeral of an old friend. I've worn it twice since, both times on sad occasions. Maybe it'll bring me luck tonight. At 7:30, Martin and I leave the house. He's unusually quiet and focused. Usually in the car, he's not averse to grumbling about my old-fashioned attitudes or habits. Today, he just turns on the radio and concentrates on the road. The Blue Oyster is one of Independence's finest restaurants. Elizabeth and I used to go here a lot back in the day. The last time I dined here was on our 30th wedding anniversary. Elizabeth was already ill but insisted on coming out. Life shouldn't consist only of hospital procedures, Alan, she said then. The maitre d' meets us at the entrance. Martin calls out a name, and we are escorted to a table at the back of the room. There are 2 people already seated there, a man about my age and a young woman in her early 30s. Mr. Edington, Miss Edington. Martin suddenly becomes the embodiment of courtesy. May I introduce my father, Alan Quincy? A pleasure. The man rises and extends his hand. Holden Edington. Iris, the girl introduces herself, and I realize everything before Martin says the next sentence. Iris and I are engaged, Father. We wanted to tell you in a special way. Iris smiles at me, and in her eyes I see genuine warmth. She has a pretty face framed by auburn curls and a soft smile. She's not at all like the type of woman Martin usually meets. Too real. Congratulations, I say, trying to hide my surprise. How long have you 2 known each other? 8 months, Iris answers. We met at a charity auction. Martin was appraising the jewelry, and I was helping with the organization. Iris works in public relations, Mr. Edington adds with undisguised pride. She has her own little agency. Over dinner, I watch Martin and Iris. She's clearly in love. Her eyes light up when she looks at my son. Martin. It's harder to say. He's attentive, even gallant, but at times I catch something calculating in his gaze. Maybe I'm just imagining it. Maybe I'm too prejudiced against my own son. Holden Edington is proving to be an interesting conversationalist. He owns a chain of fashion boutiques, started as a small store, built an empire, a typical American success story. We find common ground, discussing the good old days when business was built on reputation and quality, not marketing gimmicks. The wedding is in 3 weeks, Martin announces over dessert. We've decided to go ahead with the formalities. So soon? I can't hide my surprise. When you know it's fate, why wait? Iris squeezes Martin's hand, and he smiles strangely. There will be a small ceremony at the country club, and then a reception, Martin continues. It's very private and tasteful. Sounds lovely, I nod, though something about the rush makes me uneasy. Mr. Quincy, Holden says to me, I've heard so much about your family's traditions from Iris. She's fascinated by Quincy's jewelry-making history. Isn't she? I look at my future daughter-in-law with interest. Martin showed me albums with pictures of your work, she says. It's real art. It's a pity that the workshop no longer exists. Martin is visibly tense. He never likes to talk about the former glory of the family business. Times have changed, he says dryly. Mass production has replaced handwork. Not everywhere, Holden says softly. People will always appreciate unique pieces created by a craftsman, especially when it comes to jewelry. The dinner ends with an exchange of pleasantries and promises to meet again soon. We say goodbye as we leave the restaurant. Iris gives me a sudden hug. I'm so happy to finally meet you, Mr. Quincy. Martin has told me so many good things about you. I can hardly contain my surprise. Martin never spoke well of me. Either he's suddenly changed or he's showing Iris a completely different version of himself. In the car on the way home, Martin is silent. Only when we get to the house does he break the silence. We need to talk about the wedding, Father. Let's go into the study. I nod, feeling the familiar lump of anxiety rising in my throat. Something tells me this conversation isn't going to go well. Martin's office. My former office has changed beyond recognition in recent years. The antique oak desk that had been used by 4 generations of Quincy's had given way to a glass structure on chrome legs. Bookcases with works on jewelry making were gone, replaced by minimalist shelves with some awards and Martin certificates. On the wall where my father's portrait used to hang, there was now a plasma TV. Martin poured himself a whiskey without even asking if I wanted one. He took a sip and sat back in the leather armchair. So, what do you think? He asked, looking at me with the look of a man sure of approval. About the wedding or your fiancée? I asked, sitting down on the edge of the couch. All of it. He waved his hand. About my future wife. Her father. Impressive family, isn't it? I nodded. Iris seems like a very sweet and sincere girl. And her father is a decent man, judging from our conversation. Decent, Martin chuckled. Put it more bluntly, wealthy. Holden Edington is worth about $30 million. His chain of boutiques is a gold mine, and Iris is his only heiress. I frowned, not hiding my disappointment. I hope you're not marrying her for her father's money. Martin rolled his eyes. Jesus, Father, you always see the worst in me. Of course not. Iris is a wonderful girl, intelligent, caring, beautiful. The fact that she's rich is a nice bonus, don't you agree? I didn't say anything. I'd learned over the years not to argue directly with Martin. It was useless. He would always find a way to twist the situation so that he was right and I was a grouchy old man. Besides, Martin continued, her connections could be very useful for the development of my new business. New business? That was news to me. I thought you were a pawnbroker. Temporarily, Martin dismissed it. I have a plan to open a chain of premium jewelry stores. Not the old-fashioned needlework you used to do, but a modern approach. Exclusive suppliers, limited collections, celebrities as brand ambassadors. And where'd you get the money for such an, ambitious project? Martin grinned. That's what I wanted to talk about. The wedding is the perfect occasion to show the Edington family that I'm serious about my intentions. to show that I'm a worthy match for their daughter. After marriage, I plan to ask Holden to invest in my business. But for that to happen, the wedding has to be, uh, impressive. I see, I said, and you're counting on my help. Not just help, Father. I want you to pay for the whole thing. I stared at my son in silence, trying to see if he was joking. But no, his face was completely serious. Martin, I began slowly, do you realize that I'm living on a pension? I don't have that kind of money. Don't lie to me, he replied sharply. I know you have savings. You've always been a cheapskate, always saving for a rainy day. Well, consider it done. Even if I have some savings, I need it for my old age. Medical expenses, which are rising every year. Old age? Martin laughed. You're 74. What's old age? My father-in-law would be your age and he's the head of a business empire. And you're pretending to be a feeble old man to avoid helping your own son. I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. Holden Edington, from what I understand, is a wealthy man. Didn't it make sense that he would want to pay for his daughter's wedding? He offered to split the cost, Martin grumbled. But I said I'd take care of it, or rather, that you and I would. Quincy's family won't look like beggars. How much do you estimate this wedding will cost? Martin said a sum that took my breath away. It was almost everything I'd saved up over the years. It's crazy, I said quietly. That kind of money for one day? Not for one day, but for my future, Martin cut me off. You owe me, Father. You never believed in me, never supported my ideas. If you'd invested in my plans to modernize the business 10 years ago, we'd be millionaires now. I shook my head. History was repeating itself. Martin was once again shifting the responsibility for his failures onto me. After one, you got a business that was 4 generations in the making, and you ruined it in 3 years. And now you're blaming me? Martin's face turned red with anger. The business was obsolete. The market had changed. But you didn't want to change anything, clinging to your prehistoric methods. I was trying to save what you were destroying with your stubbornness. There was no point in arguing. For Martin, there was always only his version of events. I can't give you that kind of money, I said firmly. Martin slowly put the glass on the table. His eyes narrowed dangerously. You can, but you don't want to. Well, then you'll have to find a new place to live. What? I couldn't believe my ears. You heard me. This is my house. If you're not willing to help me, I don't have to keep you here. You have 2 choices. Either you pay for the wedding or you move out by the end of the week. I looked at the man in front of me, my son, my own flesh and blood, and I didn't recognize him. When had he turned into this cold, calculating creature? What did Elizabeth and I do wrong? Would you seriously kick your own father out of the house for money? And would you seriously deny your own son help when you had the opportunity to help? He parried. There was a heavy silence. It was starting to rain outside the window, the drops tapping against the glass, as if counting down the seconds until my decision. Give me time to think, I said at last. Until tomorrow, Martin said. I have to prepay for the wedding hall. He stood up, signaling that the conversation was over, and left the office, leaving me alone with my thoughts. The night passed without sleep. I lay in my room looking up at the ceiling and running through my options in my head. I did have enough money to pay for the wedding. I'd saved it over the years, putting it away bit by bit. I'd planned to give it to Martin when I died, a kind of inheritance that could provide him with a comfortable life or be the basis for a new business. But to give it all away now, on a whim, and for what? To impress his future father-in-law? Holden Edington seemed like a reasonable man. Can't he see what kind of man Martin is? Or is my son so good at playing the role of a successful businessman and caring groom that he deceived both father and daughter? And Iris, poor girl, she's obviously truly in love. Maybe it's worth it for her sake, so that the wedding can go off properly, so that she can have good memories. But isn't that cheating? Am I playing along with Martin's manipulations? In the morning, I dozed off and was awakened by a knock at the door. Martin didn't wait for an answer and came in. Well, he asked without preamble. What have you decided? I sat up slowly on the bed. My old bones ached after a restless night. I'll give you the money, I said. Martin's face broke into a triumphant smile. but I held up my hand to stop him. But on a condition. This is the last time you ask me for money, and after the wedding, you will never threaten to kick me out of the house again. Of course, Father, he agreed easily. Whatever you say, I'll wire the details to your post office. And he walked out without saying thank you. Typical Martin. The next 2 weeks passed in a frenzy of wedding preparations. Martin was rarely at home, constantly meeting with organizers, florists, catering. I saw my bank statements. The money was flowing out at an alarming rate. A 5-star hotel for out-of-town guests, luxury liquor, ice sculptures, all the most expensive and ostentatious. Iris stopped by our house a few times. I was glad of her visits. She was genuinely interested in the history of our family, asked me about jewelry making, about my works. On one of these visits, I decided to show her my collection, jewelry that I had kept after closing my business, not for sale, but as a memento of the old days. It's incredible, Mr. Quincy, she said, admiring the silver aquamarine brooch. Such fine workmanship. I've never seen anything like it in the stores. That's because these things aren't mass-produced, I explained. Each piece of jewelry was created individually, taking into account the character and appearance of the future owner. Martin said that your business closed down because of competition with the big brands. Not exactly, I answered cautiously. It was about a change of strategy. Martin wanted to modernize the business to make it more commercial. I understand, she nodded. I'm sorry it didn't work out. Martin said he was very worried about it. I didn't say anything. If Martin was worried, it was about the lost profits, not the ruined family legacy. You know, Iris said thoughtfully, you still have those amazing skills. Why not start again? Maybe a small workshop. There's a growing demand for one-of-a-kind pieces. At my age, starting over? I grinned. And my hands are no longer the same. Age is just a number, Mr. Quincy. And as for the hands, I can see how carefully you've handled that jewelry. There's still plenty of strength and dexterity in them. There was so much genuine faith in me and her words that I felt a surge of energy. Maybe in another life, without the burden of past disappointments. Our conversation was interrupted by Martin, who had come home earlier than usual. Iris, darling, he kissed her cheek. I didn't know you were here. Your father showed me his work, she said excitedly. They're amazing. You know, I thought it would be wonderful at the wedding if... Darling, Martin interrupted her. We've got everything planned out. No last-minute changes. But it could be a special touch. The special touch is you in your wedding dress. Martin put his arm around her shoulders. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have some details to discuss with my father. Financial, boring man talk. Iris clearly wanted to object, but held back. Of course. I'm late as it is. Mr. Quincy, it was a pleasure talking to you. Likewise, Iris, I replied sincerely. After she left, Martin's face changed visibly. What did you say to her? He asked tensely. Nothing much. She was interested in jewelry, I answered. Just don't turn her against me, Martin warned her. And don't tell her any family stories without me. She's your fiancé, Martin. She has a right to know about the family she belongs to. I'll decide what she knows and what she doesn't, he said. And by the way, I need another $20,000. There were some unforeseen expenses. What? I couldn't believe my ears. We agreed on a specific amount. It's already exorbitant. I didn't realize the rent for the ceremony was going up, and the musicians asked for more than they had originally asked for. Martin, I shook my head. This is too much. You're wasting money like water on a show. Not for show, but for our reputation, he snapped. If we don't have that money, the wedding's a bust. Is that what you want? Iris to be disappointed? Her father to think I'm a failure? Shouldn't he know the truth, I asked quietly, that this wedding is being paid for not by the groom, but by his elderly, retired father? Martin turned red. Don't even think about it. If you say a word to the Edingtons about our arrangements, I won't just throw you out of the house. I'll make you wish you'd never been born. Do you understand? He loomed over me, and for a moment I was afraid he was going to hit me. Martin had never raised a hand to me before, but at that moment there was such rage in his eyes that anything seemed possible. All right, I gave in. I'll wire the money tomorrow. That's right. Martin immediately calmed down. After all, it's in your interest too. When I marry Iris and have access to the Edingtons' money, I'll be able to give you a decent old age too. I nodded, not believing a word he said. Martin patted me on the shoulder and left the room, whistling a light-hearted tune. I remained seated, feeling the resolve building inside me. No, I can't go on like this. No more being a puppet in the hands of my own son. If I can't make him respect me, at least I can stop humiliating him. The decision came to me suddenly, like an epiphany. I was sitting in my room, going through old photographs, when I came across a picture from 10 years ago. Me handing Martin the keys to the jewelry shop. There was hope on my face, condescension on his. He took the family business for granted, never once thanking me for the years of labor invested in its creation. And he'd done the same with everything in his life. Taken for granted, unappreciated, destroyed. Iris deserved to know the truth about the man she was about to marry. Not my speculation or prejudice, but the bare facts. If after that she still decided to commit her life to Martin, well, that would be her conscious choice. But I couldn't keep quiet any longer. The plan took shape instantly. In the remaining days before the wedding, I had to gather irrefutable evidence of Martin's true nature. Not to avenge my son, but to save Iris from a mistake that could cost her years of her life and mental health. I started with the financial records. In the basement of the house were boxes of papers relating to our former business. Martin had never bothered to destroy evidence of his failures, perhaps because of the certainty that I would never use them against him. The first thing I found was a folder with notices of arrears to suppliers. Martin hadn't paid for goods for months, and the money from sales was disappearing. Then I found documents about loans at an exorbitant interest rate, money that went not for business development, but for Martin's personal expenses. Luxury car, designer watches, a vacation in the Maldives with another girlfriend. Among the papers, I found a letter from our old client, a collector who had been ordering jewelry from us for over 20 years. He wrote that he had received a fake instead of the exclusive piece he had ordered from Martin and demanded an explanation. The letter was dated shortly before the workshop closed. Martin never mentioned the incident, but the documents are only part of the truth. I knew that the most eloquent things about a person are his words and actions. So in the next step, I decided to record Martin's conversations. The idea seemed crazy for a man of my age and upbringing. Eavesdropping, recording private conversations. It went against everything I believed in. But when the happiness of an innocent girl was at stake, moral doubts faded into the background. I bought a small tape recorder at an electronics store. The salesman, a young man with tattoos on his arms, patiently explained to me how to use it. He probably thought I was going to record my memoirs or a bird singing in the park. If only he knew. I made my first recording by accident. I was just checking to see if the device was working when Martin called his longtime buddy Nate. I left the recorder on the table and left the room so as not to embarrass my son with my presence. When I returned and listened to the tape, I was shocked. "That Edington family thinks they're so special," Martin said. "The old man thinks he's a business guru, but he started with a store his father-in-law gave him." What an achievement, wow. And Iris. She's sweet, but she's ridiculously naive. She believes everything I say. If I tell her she's the most beautiful and intelligent woman in the world, she melts like ice cream. It's funny, honestly. Every day, the piggy bank of such conversations grew larger. Martin discussed with friends how he planned to use the Edingtons' connections for his business. He boasted that marrying Iris was his ticket into high society. He made fun of her provincial manners. And never once, not in any conversation, did he say he loved her. I once overheard Martin talking to a woman on the phone. Judging by the intimate tone of the conversation, it wasn't just a friend. "Things are going to be harder after the wedding, baby," he was saying, "but I'll find a way to see you. Iris will still be busy with her agency, and I'll be working late. She won't suspect a thing." At the same time as I was collecting evidence, I was watching Iris. She often stopped by to help with the final preparations for the wedding. Always friendly, attentive, with a genuine smile. She brought me homemade baked goods, asked me about my health, gave me advice on various matters. I can't say that we became close. Too little time had passed. But we established a warm, respectful relationship. One day she came alone when Martin wasn't home. She brought a photo album and asked me to tell the story of each picture. There were pictures of our family, starting with my grandfather. "I'm so interested in your family history, Mr. Quincy," she said as she flipped through the pages. "So many generations in the same business. It's like a dynasty." I told her about Quincy traditions, about how every man in our family started learning jewelry making from the age of 12, how my grandfather created the famous Quincy set, a special set of tools that was passed down from father to son, how my mother, against tradition, also mastered the craft and added a touch of feminine elegance to the family style. "And Martin?" Iris asked. "Did he also learn from childhood?" I hesitated, not wanting to lie, but not ready to reveal the bitter truth. "Martin chose a different path," I answered cautiously. "He was more interested in the business side of things." "I see," she nodded. "He said he wanted to modernize the family business, to make it more modern. Too bad it didn't work out." I didn't say anything. Martin obviously hadn't told her exactly how it hadn't worked out, or whose fault it was. A week before the wedding, I felt a prick of doubt. Was I doing the right thing? Wouldn't it be better to talk to Iris alone, to show her the materials before the ceremony? It would be less dramatic, more decent. But I knew Martin. If Iris suddenly called off the wedding, he would instantly realize who was behind it, and his revenge would be terrible. Besides, alone with Iris, I'd only have my word against Martin's, and he was a persuasive man, a man who could turn black into white. No, it had to be done in public, in front of witnesses, so that Martin couldn't get away with it or accuse me of slander. The wedding day came on a sunny October morning. The weather was surprisingly warm for this time of year, as if nature had decided to maintain the appearance of a happy day. The ceremony was held in the garden of the country club, a luxurious complex with a golf course and an artificial lake, white chairs in rows, an arch decorated with fresh flowers, red carpet, just like the romantic movies Elizabeth loved to watch. I sat in the front row like a father of the groom should. Next to me was an empty seat where Martin's mother was supposed to sit. How Elizabeth was missed now. Perhaps with her by his side, Martin would have grown up to be a different man. When the music started and Iris appeared with her father on her arm, I was breathless. She was beautiful in her simple, elegant dress. Her face glowed with happiness. Holden Edington walked beside his daughter, proud and touched. Martin waited at the altar, impeccable in his tuxedo. He was smiling, the kind of smile he saved for special occasions, a fake smile that never touched his eyes. The ceremony went off without a hitch. The vows, the rings, the kiss, the applause from the guests. I clapped along with everyone else, feeling the determination building inside. After the ceremony, everyone moved to the banquet hall to celebrate. Round tables covered with snow-white tablecloths, centerpieces of fresh flowers, crystal glasses, all paid for out of my savings, all so my son could impress the Edington family. I sat at the head table, next to the newlyweds and the bride's parents. Iris cast warm glances at me every now and then, as if she wanted to make sure I was comfortable. Martin was completely absorbed in a conversation with Holden. They were discussing some business project. When it was time for the toast, the father of the bride was the first to speak. He spoke beautifully and touchingly about his daughter, about how she had grown from a little girl with pigtails into a confident, successful woman. He wished the young people happiness, love, and mutual understanding. Then the floor was given to me. I slowly got up, feeling my heart pounding. In my jacket pocket, I had a small dictaphone and a flash drive with documents, everything I planned to present. "I'm not much of a speechmaker," I began, and my voice surprisingly sounded firm. "But today is a special day, and I want to say a few words." The hall fell silent. All eyes turned to me. Iris was smiling. Martin looked a little wary, but relaxed. He didn't expect a trick from his gutless father. "Marriage is a union based on love, trust, and honesty," I continued. "Especially honesty. Without it, everything else is an illusion, a house of cards that will crumble at the first whiff of wind." I paused and looked directly at Martin. There was a flicker of concern in his eyes. My son Martin had never been known for his honesty. As a child, he preferred to lie if there was a profit in it. I had hoped it would pass with age, but it didn't. There was a surprised whisper in the hall. Martin turned pale. Saranekam. Father, I think that's enough, he said through gritted teeth, but I had already pulled out the tape recorder. Iris, I'm sorry to do this on your wedding day, I said, looking at the confused girl. But you deserve to know the truth about the man you're committing your life to. I turned on the tape. Martin's voice, clear and recognizable, filled the room. That Edington family thinks they're so special. And Iris? Sweet, of course, but she's ridiculously naive. Believes everything I say. Iris's face contorted in pain. Holden Edington turned red with anger. Martin jumped up and tried to snatch the tape recorder from me, but I'd already turned on the next tape, the one about his plans to cheat his future father-in-law out of an investment. Then the tape of his conversation with his mistress. It's a montage, Martin shouted. He faked the whole thing. He faked this? I pulled out a flash drive and handed it to the waiter, who was standing next to the projector. Here are the documents on how Martin ruined the family business. Debts, loans, embezzlement. And here's the deed to the house in his name. Back then, I still believed my son was trustworthy. And this is how he repaid me, by threatening to evict me if I didn't pay for the wedding. The waiter, not knowing what to do, looked questioningly at the hall manager. He nodded, and a moment later, scans of the documents with the allocated amounts and signatures appeared on the big screen. Yes, I continued, feeling strangely relieved, as if I were shedding a weight I'd been carrying for years. This lavish wedding was not paid for by Martin Quincy, a successful businessman, but by his old retired father. I gave away all my savings so that my son could dust the Edington family. Iris covered her face with her hands. Her shoulders shuddered with sobs. Holden hugged his daughter, saying something softly in her ear. Martin looked at me with hatred. You're going to regret this, old man, he hissed. I already do, I answered. I wish I'd done it sooner. I wish I'd let you grow up like this. Iris stood up suddenly. Her face was tear-stained, but there was determination in her eyes. Was it true, she asked, looking at Martin. Tell me honestly, at least now. Is it true? Martin tried to take her hand, but she pulled away. Baby, it's not true. I mean, some things may sound wrong out of context, but yes or no, she insisted. Look, your father can really help me with the business, but that doesn't mean... Iris took off her wedding ring and placed it on the table. That's enough. I've made my point. She turned to the guests. I'm sorry, but there won't be a wedding. I've made a mistake. With these words, she quickly walked towards the exit. Holden Edington threw a scornful glance at Martin and followed his daughter. The guests looked at each other confusedly, not knowing how to react to what was happening. Martin looked at me with such hatred that for a moment I feared for my life. You destroyed me, he hissed. Are you satisfied? No, I answered honestly. But I did what I had to do. For Iris and for me. I turned and walked slowly toward the exit, feeling the stares of dozens of people on me. I felt heavy and light at the same time, as if I'd shed a weight I'd been carrying for years. Nate, an old friend of Martin's, caught up with me at the door. But where to now? I shrugged. I don't know. I can't go home, that's for sure. I could give you a ride into town, he offered. I was silent in Nate's car, staring out the window at the fall scenery passing by. What would happen to me now? Where would I live? How would I settle into a new place at my age? But strangely enough, these questions did not cause panic. For the first time in years, I felt free. Nate dropped me off at a small motel on the outskirts of Independence. A typical roadside establishment, a two-story building with peeling paint, a neon sign with burned-out letters, a parking lot with a couple of trucks. Not the most presentable place, but I had no choice. You sure you want to stay here? Nate eyed the motel through the windshield questioningly. I could do better. It's only temporary, I said, pulling my wallet out of my pocket, just for a couple days until I figure out what to do next. Look, he shrugged. Look, Alan, what you did today. It was awesome. Honestly, Martin deserved that a long time ago. I looked at him in surprise. But you're his friend. That's exactly why I'm telling you, Nate grinned. We've known each other since college, and I've seen him change, not for the better. All these years he's used people, lied, manipulated, and he's always gotten away with it, until now. And you never tried to talk to him about it? I tried. All I got in return were accusations of jealousy and ill will. Martin never admits his mistakes. It's always someone else's fault. I nodded. It was all too familiar. Thanks for your support, Nate, and for the ride. If you need anything, call me. He handed me his business card. I'm serious, Alan. Don't be shy. I thanked him again and got out of the car. The cold October wind got under my jacket, making me cringe. In my wedding suit, with no belongings, no plan for the future, I must have been a sorry sight. The motel receptionist, a full woman with dyed red hair, gave me a suspicious look. Room for one, I said, pulling out a credit card. For a few days. The wedding didn't go well, she asked, noticing my suit. You could say that. She grinned and held out the key. Second floor, room 23. Breakfast is from 7 to 9, but don't expect much. Just coffee and donuts. The room was exactly as I'd imagined it. A narrow bed, an old-fashioned TV, a desk with a bent chair, and a bathroom the size of a closet. But it was clean, thank you very much. I sat on the edge of the bed, loosened my tie, and for the first time that day, I let myself fully realize what had happened. I had ruined my only son's wedding, publicly exposed him, made him look like a liar and a manipulator in front of the whole town. Forever ruined his reputation in the eyes of the people whose opinion mattered to him. How did that make me feel? Guilt? Regret? Strangely enough, no. I felt, relieved. Like I was free of a heavy weight I'd been carrying for years. Like I was finally standing upright after years of bending over. The phone rang, interrupting my thoughts. The number was unfamiliar. Alan Quincy speaking, I answered. Dash, Mr. Quincy, came Martin's angry voice. I hope you're satisfied. You've destroyed my reputation, my relationships, my prospects, all because of your petty jealousy and your inability to accept the fact that I live my life and not according to your outdated rules. Martin, I sighed. I did what I thought was right. Iris deserved to know the truth about the man she was marrying. The truth, he shouted. You took my words out of context, misrepresented everything. You manipulated the facts as well as you accused me of. Those records were authentic, Martin. So were the debt papers and the money transfer papers for the wedding. You're a pathetic, vindictive old man, Martin hissed. And you know what? I'm glad it worked out this way. I'm glad I can kick you out of my life with a clear conscience. I'll give you 48 hours to get your things out of the house. Anything left after that time will be thrown out on the street. I'll be there tomorrow, I said calmly. I'll try to get it done quickly. Don't come while I'm not home, Martin warned me. I don't want to see your face. Whatever you say, son. I felt my voice trembling on the last word. I'm not your son anymore, he said and hung up. I sat staring at the faded screen of the phone. I'm not your son anymore. Those words should have hurt, broken my heart. But in a strange way, they brought only clarity. What had happened today was inevitable. Perhaps should have happened years ago. I undressed and went to bed, not expecting to be able to sleep after a day like this. But fatigue took its toll, and I fell into a deep, dreamless sleep. In the morning, I woke up with an unusual sense of freedom. For the first time in years, I didn't have to sneak into the kitchen for fear of waking Martin. I didn't have to calculate every word, every gesture for fear of displeasing him. After a meager breakfast in the motel dining room, I went to the mall. I needed to buy the essentials, a change of underwear, a t-shirt, jeans, a toothbrush. At the entrance to the store, I ran into a familiar couple, the Parker couple, longtime customers of our jewelry workshop. I was making a rare pink sapphire engagement ring for their daughter. Mr. Quincy, Mrs. Parker exclaimed. We heard about yesterday's incident. The whole town is talking about it. No wonder, I sighed. I must say, Mr. Parker lowered his voice, we've always suspected that your Martin is not as simple as he seems, especially after the story about our ring. The ring? I didn't understand. Yes, Jessica's engagement ring. Do you remember what stone we chose? Pink sapphire, 2 carats, cushion cut. That's right. Mrs. Parker splashed her hands. Oh, a year after the wedding, Jessica had the ring cleaned, and the jeweler said it was a synthetic stone, not natural. We were shocked. We called your shop, but it had already closed. We tried to find you, but your son said you'd gone abroad. I felt the color of shame flood my face. Mrs. Parker, I swear I never switched stones. If I did, it was after I'd given the case to Martin. That's what we thought, nodded Mr. Parker. You've always been an honest man, Mr. Quincy, and you proved it again yesterday. They wished me well and left, leaving me with mixed feelings. On the one hand, it was nice to know that people didn't think I was guilty of fraud. On the other, it was bittersweet to realize that the Quincy family reputation we had built over generations had been destroyed in a matter of years. After shopping, I took a cab and drove to the house. Martin had said to come when he wasn't home, so I chose the middle of the day, the time he was usually at work. The house looked the same as always, but for the first time in years, I felt like a stranger here. It was as if I were stepping into a museum of a bygone era, rather than my own home. The hallway was strangely empty. The umbrella stand was gone. The antique floor clock that had kept time for 4 generations of Quincy. Martin had clearly begun to get rid of things that reminded him of the past. I went up to my room. It was still untouched except for the drawers of the dresser, which had been pulled out, so Martin must have started checking to see if I had hidden any more valuables. My clothes, my books, my personal belongings, everything was in its place. I pulled 2 suitcases out of the closet and began methodically packing my life away. Suits, shirts, pants, photo albums, a few books that are especially treasured, a box of memorabilia, Elizabeth's wedding ring, the first coin I earned in the workshop, a lock of little Martin's hair. In a desk drawer, I found an old address book with phone numbers of friends and acquaintances. Most of the numbers were probably long gone, but it was still a link to a past life. Gathering my things, I went down to the first floor. In the living room, I stopped in front of the fireplace where framed photos stood. Martin the graduate, Martin and Veronica on their wedding day, Martin driving a new car. Not a single picture of me or Elizabeth. I walked out into the garden, neglected, overgrown, weedy, with withered grass and decayed bushes. Only the old apple tree still held on, clinging stubbornly to life. In the far corner of the garden stood a shed where garden tools and junk were stored. There in a secret corner behind the workbench, I had hidden my jewelry toolkit years ago, the legendary Quincy set that had been passed down in our family from father to son. I pushed back the workbench, removed the floorboards, and pulled out a wooden box. I opened it with trepidation, like opening an ancient relic. Inside, lined with velvet, were tools, tweezers of various sizes, hammers, files, engraving styli. Each tool was handmade, fitted to the hand of a master, polished by years of use. I took the box with me. Now that the Quincy line had broken, these tools were just old iron, but to me they remained a symbol of what I was and what Martin was to become. Back at the house, I was about to leave when I heard the sound of the door opening. Martin, back earlier than usual. He froze in the doorway when he saw me with my suitcases in the hallway. "I told you not to come over while I'm home," he hissed. "I thought you were at work," I said calmly. "I was just leaving." Martin looked at my suitcases. "I hope you didn't bring anything that doesn't belong to you." "Only personal belongings." I tried to speak smoothly, without emotion. "And photos." "What's this?" He nodded at the wooden box under his arm. "A set of tools." "My tools, Martin." "Let me see." He held out his hand. "What for?" "You've never been interested in jewelry making. Sanekinuant. This is my home, and I have a right to know what you take out of it." I sighed and handed him the box. Martin opened the lid, surveyed the contents dismissively. "Old junk," he snorted. "Take it, though." "I don't need it." He slammed the lid shut and handed the box back. There was so much contempt for the labor of 4 generations in that careless gesture that I felt a wave of anger rising inside. But I didn't let it spill over. Not now. "Is that it?" Martin asked. "Have you forgotten anything else?" I shook my head. "Nothing that matters. Then go away and don't come back. Sirnowan." "Goodbye, Martin." I looked into his eyes, trying to find a spark of regret, a hint that somewhere deep inside he was still my son. But all I saw was coldness and anger. "Goodbye, Mr. Quincy," he said formally, as if he were addressing a stranger. I walked outside, feeling strangely light. The sky was clear, and the sun was shining brightly, but without the heat of summer. A good day to start a new life. The cab took me back to the motel. Had to decide where to live next. The motel was too expensive for an extended stay, especially since I had spent most of my savings on the ill-fated wedding. That evening, I got a call from Nate. "How you doing, man? Have you heard the news yet?" "What news?" "Martin's drunk. He's sitting in the Blue Whale getting drunk and telling anyone who'll listen what a terrible father you are and how you ruined his life." "It's not news, Nate," I sighed. "Martin has always blamed others for his problems." "Yeah, but not many people believe him now. After yesterday, people aren't as stupid as they seem. A lot of people saw through him a long time ago. They just kept quiet out of politeness." "I didn't want a public humiliation for my son," I admitted. "I just didn't see any other way out." "You saved the girl from a terrible mistake," Nate assured me. "And maybe you shook Martin up, although I wouldn't count on the latter." After I talked to Nate, I lay on my bed, thinking about the future. For the first time in years, it was completely in my hands. No commitments, no compromises to keep the shaky peace with Martin. It was just me and my old age, which I had yet to live out with dignity. In the morning, I was awakened by a phone call. An unfamiliar number. Alan Quincy speaking. Dash 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 I hope I didn't wake you? No, no, I'm up, I lied, blinking sleepily. Mr. Quincy, I'd like to see you. There's a conversation I'd rather have in person than on the phone. I raised my eyebrows in surprise. Of course, Mr. Edington. When and where? At lunch, perhaps. Do you know Marco's? Yes, I do. I'd passed that Italian restaurant downtown many times, but I'd never been inside. Too expensive for my budget. Oh, great. I'll meet you there at 1 o'clock. And, Mr. Quincy, thank you for your honesty, for your courage. I didn't know what to say, so I just thanked him for the invitation and promised to be on time. Marco's was exactly as I'd imagined. White tablecloths, dimmed lights, waiters in smart suits. Holden Edington was already waiting at a table in the corner, looking up something on his phone. Mr. Quincy, he rose and shook my hand firmly. I'm glad you could make it. Call me Alan, please, and I asked, sitting down across from him. Then I'm just Holden to you too, he smiled. The waiter took our order and left, leaving us alone. How's Iris? I asked, worried about the girl whose wedding I'd ruined. She's hanging in there, Holden sighed. Of course it's not easy for her. She truly loved your son, or whoever he pretended to be around her. I'm so sorry for the way things turned out. I shook my head. Believe me, if there had been another way— Don't apologize, Holden interrupted. You did what a man would do. You saved my daughter from a marriage that would have brought her nothing but misery. I invited you here to thank you for that. I lowered my eyes in embarrassment. It was my duty. I just put it off for too long. You know, Holden said thoughtfully, I've always prided myself on my ability to understand people. It helped me to build a business, to choose the right partners, to avoid many mistakes. But with Martin, I made a mistake. I completely missed his true nature. My son can charm when he needs to charm, I admitted bitterly, and manipulative, a talent he didn't inherit from me. Our order came: pasta for Holden, risotto for me. We were silent for a moment, tasting the food. Alan, Holden said at last, I hear you're in a difficult situation. Without a place to live, after breaking up with your son, temporary difficulties, I tried to keep my dignity. I'll figure something out. I'm sure you will, Holden nodded. But let me make you an offer. I have a small apartment downtown. I keep it for business associates who come to Independence, but it's often empty. You could stay there until you decide what to do next. I looked at him in surprise. Holden, that's very generous, but I can't accept a gift like that. We hardly know each other. It's not a gift, he countered. It's more of a thank you, and a mutually beneficial offer, if you will. The apartment needs looking after. Besides, he hesitated, there's something else. But I think we'd better talk about that after dinner. We continued our meal talking about neutral topics: weather, history of the city, fishing. It turned out that we were both fans of this quiet activity. After dessert and coffee, Holden finally got back to his mysterious something. Alan, Iris tells me that you are an amazing jeweler, that the jewelry you created were true works of art. That's too generous an assessment, I said, embarrassed. I was just good at what I did. Don't be modest, Holden smiled. I've made some inquiries. Your work is still highly prized by collectors. Which brings me to my point. How would you feel about going back to the craft? The apartment that Holden Edington offered turned out to be a real treasure. Small but tastefully furnished, in an old brick house with high ceilings and large windows. Located on the third floor, it overlooked a quiet courtyard with maple trees and benches. After years of living in a tense atmosphere with Martin, this place seemed like an oasis of calm. How long do you plan to stay at Independence? Holden asked, showing me around the apartment that first day. I don't know, I answered honestly. I've lived here all my life, but now, nothing keeps me in this city, except the memories, he said softly. Not all of them pleasant. Holden nodded understandingly. You know, Alan, I'm sure you'll find your place. A man with your experience and skills shouldn't just live out his life alone. His words hit something deep inside me. Living out my life was how I had envisioned my life for the past few years, passively waiting for the end. But what if I was wrong? What if 74 isn't the finish line, but just another turn on a long road? It's been a week since I left Martin's house. I was settling into my new apartment, going out for walks around the neighborhood, checking out the local cafes. One morning, sitting by the window with a cup of coffee, I watched the old man across the street. He was clearly over 80, but he was energetically trimming the bushes in the garden, humming something to himself. So, alive. Unlike me. Then I made a decision. I'd let circumstances and Martin define my life for too long. It was time to take it into my own hands. I had savings left, not the ones that had gone to the wedding, but others that Martin didn't know about. Not too much, but enough for a fresh start. And I still had my hands in the knowledge I had accumulated over half a century as a jeweler. The next morning, I set out to find a space for a small workshop. Not in the city center. I couldn't afford to rent there. I was looking for something modest in a quiet neighborhood where I could work in a peaceful environment. After a few days of searching, I found the perfect place, a small space on the first floor of an old building 3 blocks from my new apartment. It used to be a sewing shop, but the owner had retired and was renting the space for a reasonable fee. A large window facing the street, good natural light, which is critical for jewelry work, and a separate room in the back that could be used as a storage area or a place for extra painstaking work. "This place needs some work," Mrs. Holt, the elderly owner, remarked as she showed me around. "The wallpaper is peeling, the floors creak, but the roof doesn't leak, and the wiring is new. I replaced it 5 years ago after that short-circuit incident." "I'm fine with it," I said, imagining how I'd arrange the equipment. "When can I move in?" "Right now," she shrugged. "Just pay the deposit in the first month's rent." We struck a deal, and I became the owner of my own workshop. For the first time in many years, I felt a rush of enthusiasm and, yes, happiness. It was like coming home after a long absence. The next 2 weeks passed in a flurry of activity. I ordered basic equipment that wasn't in my old toolkit: a soldering station, a polishing machine, an ultrasonic cleaning bath. I bought a simple but sturdy work table, a desk lamp with adjustable light, and shelving for storing materials and finished products. I found suppliers of metals and stones. Some of them still remembered me from the old days and offered good terms of cooperation. By the end of November, the workshop was ready. I hung a modest sign: a Quincy jewelry workshop. No pretentious names, no promises of exclusive and premium. Just my name and the business I do. On the opening day, it was snowing, the first of the season. Large flakes were slowly swirling outside the window, creating a quiet holiday atmosphere. I didn't expect an influx of customers. Who would go to a new workshop without advertising and recommendations? But I was still nervous, like a boy before his first date. Around noon, the bell above the door rang. I had found it at a flea market and installed it as a tribute to tradition. An elderly woman entered the workshop wrapped in a woolen scarf. "Hello," I went up to meet her. "What can I do for you?" She squinted her eyes at me. "Are you the Quincy? The one who used to run the shop on Maple Street?" "Yes, that's me," I confirmed, surprised to be remembered. "Thank God," she exclaimed. "I thought I'd never find you. I have the bracelet you made for my mom back in the 80s. The clasp is broken, and to fix it, I'm afraid to give it to anyone. This is the real Quincy." She took out a velvet bag from her purse and pulled out a silver bracelet with aquamarines. I immediately recognized my work, the intricate weaving that was my signature technique at the time. "Of course I remember this model," I said, taking the bracelet gently. "It's not hard to fix. I can do it in a couple days." "That's wonderful," the woman said happily. "You know, I always told my daughter that the real masters of their craft are not going anywhere. They just wait for their time." After she left, I sat looking at the bracelet for a long time. 30 years had passed, and the piece was perfectly preserved, except for the broken clasp. Craftsmanship doesn't die if you treat it with respect. In the following days, there were few customers, but they came, some with repairs to old jewelry, some asking for appraisals of family jewels. One young couple ordered wedding rings, simple but with individual engraving. The work was slow. After all, age was taking its toll, and my hands were no longer so dexterous. But I made up for it with experience and care. No compromises in quality. Gradually, the workshop began to acquire a reputation. People recommended me to friends and acquaintances. "Old Quincy's back," was the talk of the town. I did not earn much. The top clients still preferred the shiny showcases of large jewelry chains. But I had enough to live on and rent, and every day I woke up feeling that I was needed, that I was doing something worthwhile. Holden Edington came to see me a couple of times. He was surprised and delighted at my new endeavor. "You know, Alan," he said during one of his visits, looking at a brooch I was working on, "you have a real gift. I'm sorry that talent has been forgotten for so many years." "Better late than never," I smiled. "How's Iris?" A shadow flickered across Holden's face. "She's hanging in there." It hasn't been easy for her. Such a public scandal, the breakup of a relationship, but she's a strong girl. She's fully engaged in her work now, growing her agency. "Tell her I think of her often," I said sincerely. And again, I apologize for the whole situation. "She doesn't blame you, Alan. On the contrary, she's grateful for the truth." After that conversation, I often thought of Iris. In a way, our fates were linked. Both of us had been hurt by Martin. Both of us were starting our lives over. I hoped she was doing well. One morning, as I was working on an order, an engraved gold pendant for an elderly couple's anniversary, a bell rang. I looked up and froze. Iris was standing on the doorstep. In a simple gray coat with a blush of frost on her cheeks, she looked younger than I remembered. Dash, Mr. Quincy. She smiled a little uncertainly. May I come in? Of course, Iris. I hurriedly put my work aside and stepped out from behind the counter. It's good to see you. Come in and have a seat. At the back of the workshop, I'd set up a small corner for customers. A table, two comfortable armchairs, an electric kettle for tea or coffee. It's beautiful, Iris said, looking around. Cozy, and not at all like modern jewelry stores. It's not a store, I smiled. More like an old-style workshop. Tea, coffee? Tea, if I may. I put the kettle on and took out a tin box of cookies, a little treat I used to indulge in every week. Father tells me you've started your own business. Iris accepted the cup gratefully. I'm happy for you. I really am. Thank you, I nodded. And how are you doing? Holden said you've been focusing on your work. Yeah, the agency's growing, she smiled weakly. It's a lot of work, which is exactly what I need right now. We were silent for a moment, sipping our tea. Iris looked thoughtful, as if she were gathering her thoughts before an important conversation. Mr. Quincy, she said at last, I came to thank you for opening my eyes to Martin. It was painful, very, but necessary. I'm sorry I had to do it this way, I replied sincerely. At the wedding, in front of all the guests. Otherwise, I wouldn't have believed it. Iris shook her head. Martin is a persuasive man. He would have found an explanation for any suspicions, any doubts. He would have convinced me that you were just a jealous old man who couldn't accept his happiness. She was right, and we both knew it. How are you coping? I asked cautiously. After everything, there are good days and bad days, she shrugged. Sometimes I wake up and thank fate that I avoided a terrible mistake. Sometimes, she hesitated. Sometimes I still miss him. The Martin I thought I knew. I understand, I said quietly. Dash, I miss my son sometimes too. Not the man he's become, but the boy he once was, or who I wanted him to be. Iris looked at me carefully. Do you communicate with him? I shook my head. No. After that day, we become strangers. He's been going through some bad times, Iris said carefully. He lost his job at the pawn shop. I hear he started drinking. This news did not surprise me, but it still pricked my heart. No matter what, Martin was still my son. Didn't you try to help him? Iris asked, and there was no judgment in her voice, only genuine curiosity. He won't accept my help, I sighed. I'm his enemy now, the man who ruined his plans. Besides, helping doesn't mean indulging. I've been doing this for too long, and look where it's gotten me. Iris nodded thoughtfully. You know, Mr. Quincy, I was angry with you for a long time after the wedding. I thought, why couldn't you have told me sooner? Why did you have to wait until the last moment? And why? I asked, preparing myself for a fair rebuke. I understand now, she smiled sadly. You wanted to give Martin a chance to be a better man, to change for love. Her words surprised me. I'd never thought of it that way, but there was truth in them. Somewhere deep inside, I hoped that Iris would change Martin, make him better. A naive hope. Everyone has their own path, Iris said quietly, as if reading my thoughts. Martin chose his. You chose yours, and I've made my choice too. She set the cup down and stood up. Thank you for the tea, Mr. Quincy. And for everything else too. Are you leaving? I got up too. I hope you'll come back. Just to talk or order some jewelry. She smiled. I will. I have an idea for a brooch. Something special, one of a kind. But that's for another time. At the door, she turned around. You know, I'm glad you're starting over. It's inspiring. If you could do it at 74, I can do it at 29. After she left, I sat for a long time looking at the unfinished tea. It's strange how people's fates intertwine. Martin had brought Iris and me together, but it was his absence from our lives that allowed us both to start over. When I returned to work, I was surprised to find that my hands hurt less and my eyes saw more clearly. It was as if meeting Iris had given me new strength, new energy. That day, I finished the order ahead of schedule, and for the first time in a long time, I felt really happy. December was snowy and cold, but the workshop was warm. I installed an extra heater and hung thick curtains to keep the heat in at night. Business was going well. Christmas was approaching, and people were looking for gifts for their loved ones. Some were ordering new ornaments, others were bringing in old family heirlooms for restoration to give to the younger generation. One evening, just as I was about to close the workshop, the bell rang. Nate walked in, shaking the snow off his jacket. "There you are, old man," he exclaimed. "I was halfway across town before I found you. You could have just called." I grinned, glad to see a familiar face. "I wanted to surprise you." He looked around. "Nice place you got here, just like old times." "Have a seat," I pointed to the visitor's chair. "Tea, coffee?" "Whiskey would be better, but coffee will do," Nate grinned. Over coffee, he told me the town news. Martin had sold the house. Too much debt. Moved into a small apartment on the outskirts. Rumor had it he'd gotten a job as a clerk at an electronics store, the only place that would hire someone with his reputation. "He's also in some kind of AA group," Nate added. "I don't know if it's true or not, but I'd like to believe it." I nodded, not knowing what to say. Part of me was glad Martin was trying to take control of his life. The other part remembered all the previous new beginnings that had invariably ended in nothing. "How about you, Alan?" Nate looked at me carefully. "Do you regret your decision? What you did at the wedding?" I wondered. Did I regret it? About publicly humiliating my own son? For ruining his plans and possibly his life? "No," I finally answered. "I don't regret it. It was necessary. For Iris, for me, and maybe for Martin himself." Nate nodded understandingly. "You know, I saw him the other day, a glimpse of him at the supermarket. He looked different, like something was broken in him. Or maybe it was healed. It's hard to say." After Nate left, I sat in the workshop for a long time, pondering the vicissitudes of fate. A year ago, I'd been living in but not my house, suffering humiliation from my son, counting the days until the end. Today I was back doing what I loved, living in a quiet apartment and looking forward to the future with hope for the first time in a long time. As I walked back home through the snowy streets, I thought about Iris and her words about new beginnings. Perhaps life really is never too late to start over. Even at 74? Even after everything? Iris kept her word and returned to the workshop a week after our first meeting. This time she brought with her a sketch, a neat drawing of a brooch in the shape of a bird with open wings. "A phoenix," she explained, noticing my interest, "a symbol of rebirth from the ashes." "It's a beautiful idea," I scrutinized the drawing. "What metals and stones do you prefer?" "Gold for the base," Iris said thoughtfully. "And for the plumage, maybe garnets, to create a flame effect." We spent almost an hour discussing the details, the size of the brooch, the placement of the stones, the technical nuances of fastening. Iris surprised me with her knowledge and attention to detail. It was obvious that she had seriously prepared for the conversation. "You know a lot about jewelry for someone from a different field," I remarked when we finished with the sketch. "I studied art history in college," she smiled. "I majored in arts and crafts. I even wrote a term paper on the development of jewelry techniques in the 19th century. So how did you end up in PR?" "Life took an unexpected turn," she shrugged. "After college, I couldn't find a job in my specialty. A friend offered me a temporary part-time job at her agency. It sucked me in." I nodded, understanding her feelings. Life rarely goes according to the plan we make for it. "And now you want to go back to the beginning?" I asked. "To art?" "Not exactly." She twirled her teacup thoughtfully. "Rather to find a balance, to use my knowledge and love of art in my daily work. My agency is starting to specialize in promoting artists, galleries, jewelry brands with an authorial approach." "Sounds interesting," I said sincerely. "I wish you good luck." "Thank you," she smiled. "Speaking of work, I heard that you are gaining momentum. Are the orders coming in?" Slowly, I nodded. "I'm making enough to live on, and that's the main thing." We were silent, finishing our tea. There was something cozy in that silence, in the glow of the winter sun on the metal instruments, in the quiet ticking of the old clock on the wall. "Mr. Quincy," Iris said at last, looking me straight in the eye, "I want to tell you something about Martin." My heart clenched. Whatever she was going to say, it was clearly not easy for her. I met him by chance yesterday, she continued, at the supermarket. He looked shabby, thin, circles under his eyes. At first I wanted to just walk past him, but I couldn't. Did you two talk? I asked him quietly. Yeah, it was awkward at first, but then, it was like something broke in him, or something new. He apologized to me, Mr. Quincy, said it was a terrible thing to do, and that he understood why I left. I raised my eyebrows in surprise. That doesn't sound like the Martin I knew. I thought so too, Iris nodded. But he seemed sincere, said he was in a 12-step program in AA, and that admitting his mistakes was part of the healing process. I didn't know what to say. Martin admitting his mistakes? It seemed unbelievable. But there's something else, Iris hesitated. He was talking about you, Mr. Quincy, and not very well. I'm not surprised, I grinned bitterly. He said you ruined his life, that because of you he'd lost not only me, but his job, his reputation, his home, that all his business plans had collapsed because no one wanted to do business with him. I took a deep breath. Martin was always looking for someone to blame for his failures, always blaming others. It started back when he was a kid. I told him the same thing. Iris smiled weakly. Saw him, that he made his own choices, that he lied to me, that he manipulated people, and that what you did at the wedding was just a consequence of his actions, not the cause of his problems. How did he react? Angry at first, she shook her head. But then, he just deflated, said his therapist said the same thing, but he was having trouble accepting it. Ask me to tell you? She hesitated. He asked me to tell you that he still won't forgive you, and he hopes you're suffering too. The words hurt her heart, but they didn't surprise her. Martin had always been vindictive. I understand, I nodded. Thank you for telling me. I think he's at a crossroads, Iris said carefully. Part of him wants to change, to be a better person. Another part of him clings to old hurts, to the way he's always been. I don't know which one will win. I don't know either, I answered honestly, but it's his way, his choice. I've tried for too long to control his life, to protect him from the consequences of his own actions. Maybe that was my mistake. Iris nodded thoughtfully. I'm grateful to fate that things turned out this way. If it hadn't been for what you did at the wedding, I would have married a man who didn't really love me, spent years trying to win his approval, to fix him, to make him happy. And in the end, I would have failed anyway. And now? I asked. Now what? Now I'm free, she said simply. Free to build my life, to do what I love, to meet someone who will appreciate me for who I am. Isn't that worth a few months of pain? There was a wisdom in her words that surprised me. In her 29 years, Iris understood what I was only now beginning to realize at 74. I'm glad we had this talk, Mr. Quincy. She rose, getting ready to leave. And I'm looking forward to my Phoenix brooch. It'll be ready in 3 weeks, I promised. And Iris, thank you for telling me about Martin and for not holding a grudge. You're welcome, she smiled warmly. I'll see you later. After she left, I sat for a long time, staring at the brooch, a phoenix rising from the ashes, a symbolic choice for both of us. Maybe for Martin too, if he could find the strength to truly change. That night when I got home, I pulled out an old photo album. I flipped through it from beginning to end, stopping at pictures of Martin over the years. Here he is, a baby in the arms of a happy Elizabeth. Here he is taking his first steps, holding my hand. Here's a frowning teenager at a family picnic. Here's a proud college graduate. Where did we take a wrong turn? At what point did we lose touch, turn from family to housemates and then enemies? Was it inevitable, or could I have made a difference? I didn't know the answer to these questions. All I knew was that there was no going back. One can only move forward, learning from mistakes. I finished the brooch for Iris ahead of schedule. I worked on it with special inspiration, putting all the skill, all the knowledge accumulated over many years. The golden bird with open wings studded with small pomegranates seemed to be about to fly from the palm of my hand. When Iris came to pick up the finished work, Her eyes widened with admiration. "It's beautiful, Mr. Quincy. Even better than I imagined." "I'm glad you like it." I watched as she examined the brooch from every angle, admiring the play of light on the faceted stones. "It's a work of art," she said sincerely. "I'll wear it with pride." When it was time to pay, Iris pulled out her checkbook. "How much do I owe you?" I said the amount, deliberately understating it. I wanted Iris to have the brooch to symbolize her new beginning. "It's too little," she frowned. "You should pay more for this kind of work." "Consider it a friendly discount," I smiled. "In that case, I have a counter-proposal," Iris said firmly. "I want you to let me help you promote your workshop. Create a website for you. Organize a small exhibition of your work. Perhaps even an article in the local newspaper. Professionally, through my agency." "Iris, that's unnecessary." "No, it's fair," she argued. "Your talent deserves recognition, Mr. Quincy, and I know how to help him find the right audience." I hesitated. On the one hand, the idea seemed too ambitious for my humble workshop. On the other hand, I was warmed by the thought that my craft would have a new life, a new breath. "Okay," I finally agreed. "But let's start small. For example, with a website." Iris shone. "Great, I'll send a photographer to you next week. We'll need to take pictures of the workshop, of the work process, of the finished products, and then we'll prepare a small interview for the website." Thus began our cooperation, which over time grew into a true friendship. Iris turned out to be not only a talented PR specialist, but also a wonderful person. Sensitive, attentive, with a subtle understanding of art. Thanks to her efforts, my workshop became known not only in Independence, but also in neighboring cities. Orders came from other states. Someone saw photos of my work on the internet. Someone read an article in a crafts magazine that mentioned Quincy's workshop. Spring brought new changes. On Iris's advice, I took on an assistant, a young girl named Lily, a graduate of an art school. She wanted to learn jewelry making from a real master, and I needed a pair of young hands to fulfill the orders, which were becoming more and more numerous. Lily turned out to be a capable student. She grasped everything on the fly, was not afraid of difficulties, and asked the right questions. Teaching her was like going back in time to when I was apprenticed to my father. "You have to feel the metal," I said, showing her how to hold the hammer correctly. "It's alive. It has character. Gold is capricious but malleable. Silver is more austere, demands respect. Platinum is a real queen. You have to work with it respectfully and patiently." Lily listened attentively, absorbing not only the technical skills, but also the philosophy of the craft, passed down in our family from generation to generation. And in those moments, I felt a strange peace. The Quincy line would not be interrupted. The craftsmanship would not die with me. The summer flew by with work and new acquaintances. Thanks to the growing reputation of the workshop, I was approached not only by ordinary townspeople, but also by collectors, connoisseurs of old craftsmanship. One of them, an elderly gentleman named Walter Prescott, became a regular visitor. He could spend hours watching the process of creating jewelry, asking questions about techniques, discussing the history of jewelry art. "You know, Alan," he once said when we were having tea after the workshop closed, "what you are doing is the preservation of tradition in the highest sense of the word. Not just the repetition of old forms, but the continuation of a living line of craftsmanship." His words moved me. For the first time in many years, I felt that my work mattered not only to me, but to the culture at large. The fall brought news of Martin. Nate, as always, was the source of the town gossip. "Your son is out of town," he said, stopping by my workshop one rainy October day. "Word is he found a job in Portland, something in sales." "How long ago?" I asked, trying to keep my voice neutral. "A couple weeks ago. I sold my stuff, gave up my apartment. Looks like it's gone for good." I nodded, digesting the information. Strangely, the news didn't make me feel sad or relieved. It was just a statement of fact. My son had left without saying goodbye, without trying to establish a relationship. Perhaps it was for the best, for both of us. "Did he try to contact you before he left?" Nate asked. "No," I shook my head. "But I didn't expect him to." "Did you? Would you want to find his new address right?" I wondered. Did I want to reconnect with Martin? To forgive and be forgiven? To start over, like father and son? No, I finally answered. Some bridges are better left burned. If Martin ever wants to contact me, he knows where to find me. Nate nodded understandingly. Maybe he needs time, space, to sort himself out. Maybe, I agreed, not really believing it. Or maybe we're just too different to be family. By November, it was exactly 1 year since I'd opened the workshop. Iris insisted on a small celebration, a buffet for clients and friends, an exhibition of the year's best work, a glass of champagne to celebrate the prosperity of Quincy's business. That evening, looking at the people gathered in my studio, Iris and her father, Lily and her parents, Nate, Walter Prescott, and other clients who had become friends, I felt a deep sense of gratitude. Life had taken an unexpected turn, giving me a second chance, a new beginning at an age when many are already taking stock. To Mr. Quincy and his golden hands, Holden Edington toasted, raising his glass. Here's to the master who keeps the tradition and creates the future. Everyone raised their glasses, and I smiled embarrassedly, unaccustomed to such attention. After the feast, when the guests had gone, Iris and I were left alone to put away the last of the glasses and plates. It was a lovely evening, she said, folding the napkins. Did you see how people admired your work? I did, I nodded. And it's all because of you, Iris. Without your help, no one would have known about my workshop. Don't be modest, she smiled. It's your talent that attracts people. I just helped them find their way. We were silent for a moment, finishing cleaning up. It was snowing outside the window, large flakes swirling in the light of the street lamps, creating an atmosphere of magic. I heard about Martin, Iris said carefully. About him leaving. Yes, I confirmed. To Portland, they say. Have you tried to contact him? No, and I won't. Iris looked at me carefully. Do you have any regrets? About what happened a year ago? About your decision? I wondered. Did I regret that day at the wedding? That I had publicly exposed my son, ruined his plans, lost my last connection with the only person I had ever known? No, I answered firmly. I don't regret it. It was the right decision. Hard, painful, but the right one. For me? Iris asked quietly. For all of us, I smiled weakly. For you, so you wouldn't tie your life to a man who didn't appreciate you. For Martin, who should have faced the consequences of his actions long ago. And for me to stop being complicit in his manipulations, to stop indulging, turning a blind eye, making excuses. Iris nodded silently. You know, I continued, looking out the window at the falling snow, they say that family is the most important thing in life, that blood ties are sacred. But sometimes family is the people we choose, people with whom we share values, dreams, principles, people who see us for who we are and still stick by us. Like you and me? Iris smiled. Like all of us. I circled the now empty workshop, as if the guests were still here. Lily, who was learning from me. Holden, who believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. You with your phoenix brooch and your faith in new beginnings. Even grumpy old Walter with his passion for the history of jewelry making. Iris walked over to me and gave me a sudden hug. Happy anniversary of your new life, Mr. Quincy. That evening, as I drove home through the snowy streets, I thought about the vicissitudes of fate. A year ago, I lost my son, my home, my life. Today I have a new family, a new home, a new purpose. And most importantly, I found myself. Martin chose his path. I chose mine. Maybe someday our paths will cross again. Maybe not. In any case, I was ready to move on, doing what I did best, creating beauty with my own hands and sharing it with the world.